Hi there. Wanted to give an update for the environment development for 40 days. And I want to talk about a couple improvements that have been made. And one involves the terrain shader, another involves the grass that you're seeing here. This shader has been updated pretty substantially from the last time I posted a video. The most obvious addition is the addition of normal mapping. That was relatively straightforward to do, and not that much consideration needed to be made for the fact that it's a tri-planar and a procedural shader. The next major improvement was tightening up the lines of transition between one zone to the next. So you can see here we're transitioning between sand or beach sand and our moss, where grass is growing. And before this was cleaned up, the transition areas looked a bit more like this. Here it looks okay, but when it's done for all transition areas, it looks really unnatural, because instead of having sand moving onto grass, you have these wide areas where you have something that's 50% grass and 50% sand, and doesn't look natural, and looks like it was two textures faded together and not something that was done by hand, or not something more natural looking. So that improvement was done by basically making the transfer function here a bit steeper. Without going into too much detail, basically the distribution of values, or the transfer from one section to the next, was loosely defined as a loose sigmoid function. Most of this transition is made by Perlin noise. The distribution of Perlin noise is sort of loosely sigmoid. It's I'd say a broad Gaussian distribution. So to tighten it up, we basically had to replace that transition, or that transfer function, with one that was steeper. So in a sense, we used an equation that produced a sigmoid function, or a transfer function, but with a much steeper middle part. So the middle part of the S would be more vertical. And basically what that means is we are all sand, and then we very rapidly transfer to all moss. And you can see the results look pretty realistic. It looks like somebody may have painted this on the terrain, or it looks almost as realistic as you would see in nature. And the trick is to, again, you can see right where the dot is where the area where it's blending between the two. You want to make the area where it's blending between the two as narrow as possible, or as narrow, or much narrower than it was before. So that improvement was made. The next improvement is a little bit less noticeable, because you can't see it unless it's there. But basically, the naive version of the shader was switching between the different planes based on slope, where it actually needed to blend between the different planes. And when I say planes, I mean the logical planes that are used for the texturing. Since we're not using UVs in this case, we're using world coordinates. And based on the slope of the face that we're texturing, we need to transition between the different planes, the planes that are the corollary to the different directions we have in our 3D space. So for example, when you're texturing the ground here, you're pulling coordinates out of the XZ plane, which correlates to the Y axis. And so again, once that transits, or once it was updated, so it's blending between them, you can't really see. All you can see is the absence of that problem. A few minor bits. This banding, that actually comes from the fact that while we're taking our texture coordinates from the three planes and blending them, we keep our texture coordinates, or we keep our noise coordinates, in the XZ plane. And that way you get these really cool looking streaks. It looks like where the water's dripped down over time and moss has grown. And that's because basically you can think of the noise that causes that grass texture to be generated at that point as existing in a column. And that column correlates to a single point on the ground. But anyway, by developing it way, you get these nice water-looking streaks for free on your rock textures. Okay, the next thing that was developed was this grass, and this grass has been shifted from a pretty standard billboarded grass setup, where you're using a quad or a set of quads with some textures and a lot of transparency. These have been updated to actually be rendered as individual blades of grass, although they're being clumped together, to make them more efficient. But these are actually modeled as individual blades of grass. And the trade-off, or the benefit from doing that, is there are now no transparent areas. And in areas where you're looking horizontally through a lot of overlapping objects, the lack of overlapping transparency is and can be and is a huge performance boost. So in this case, just switching this grass to single-bladed or to an actual modeled grass has almost doubled our frame rate in areas like this. For some things, like these trees, you're not dealing with so much rendering on top of one another, or so many layers of transparency. So there's not that much benefit. There's not that much to be gained. Now, if you had a forest of these and they were overlapping one another, then you would probably gain from this. But in this case, it's not much of a benefit. But in areas where you have, again, these really deep views, horizontal views through many different layers, the performance gain is substantial. Excuse me, and we've applied the same trick here, where instead of using the original billboarded leaves, we've replaced them all with modeled leaves, and we've moved the entire bamboo clumps, the bamboo bunches, to an opaque shader. And again, the performance gain was substantial. Even for a small clump like this, you're looking at a significant increase in frame rate. So that's it. We've added in, of course, these trees, and we've updated the environment itself a bit more. And a couple improvements are going to be made. More terrain details are being developed, different trees and bushes. And also, you can see that on the top of these rocks, you're getting a lot of sand. That might be desirable in some places, but it looks strange on smaller rocks. Generally, smaller rocks won't develop that much sand and vegetative growth on top. So these will actually be replaced. The shader on these will be replaced with a stripped-down version of the terrain shader, which just excludes the sand. So that's one update that's going to come. And you can see this environment. Another island's been added in over here. There's another one on this side. Because of how this development pipeline is being set up, the individual island development is relatively fast. Instead of being in a situation where the development of each island is a fairly slow manual process done by an environment artist, this game is being developed, so most of the work is up front. So when the environment work is done, you'll be able to produce an island this size or that size, including manual cleanup and tweaking details and everything else. You'll be able to produce an island that size in probably a couple hours. And this game will have a fairly large number of islands that you can travel between, you can swim between, and will act as sort of separate areas. It's an open world, but these islands will act as separate areas where you can do stuff. It will be fairly fast to develop. So part of the reason we only have one island is we're not developing this island as much as we're developing the tools to make all the islands. So that's starting to near, it's starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So pretty soon we'll be in a position where we can develop the environment basically, as quickly as we want. But once that's done, the next step will be developing more of the gameplay, specifically the hunting. The hunting is going to be developed alongside of the crafting, so it can be developed for a longer period of time. So the next thing that'll actually get done is likely to be the hunting, and of course animals and the AI for them, and also some weapons and some animation. And so that's it. So thanks for watching.